This is Between the Brackets, a Mediawiki podcast, episode 41, August 20, 2019. Welcome to Between the Brackets. I'm Yaron Koren. My guest for this episode is Lucas Billett, who is a capital project manager at the company Ingredion. Lucas lives in Canada, and he's actually the third Canadian who's been on this show, or fourth if you count Daniel Robbins, who was born there. I don't know if that's a coincidence or something more, but anyway, that's pretty interesting, I think. Anyway, Lucas, welcome to the program.
Hi, thank you for having me on.
So, I said you're in Canada. Where specifically are you located?
All right, well, I work at the Cardinal factory of Ingredion Corporation. That's about 80 kilometers south of Ottawa, or say 140 miles north of Syracuse for U-types.
Yeah, okay. Syracuse, New York. That's
Yep.
That's in the United States. So yeah, you work at a company called Ingredion. My understanding is that it's one of those very big companies that no one has ever heard of. Is that pretty much right?
Well, I mean, lots of people have heard of it. It just depends on who you are, right?
Right.
We're set up as an ingredient solutions provider, right? So we're internationally arranged. We've got more than 11,000 employees in more than 40 manufacturing plants across, serving customers across 120 countries. So we make raw food materials, starches, sweeteners, dextrins, all kinds of stuff for finished goods suppliers, like some of your big Unilever, Mondelez, Nestle, Mars, all the dozens of huge food manufacturers that make packaged goods that get right to your cupboards and tables. So, and it's in all kinds of it's ice cream, soda, soup, confectionery, everything.
Wow.
We also make industrial products like starches for corrugators, all kinds of agricultural products for animal feeds and pet foods, all kinds of things.
Yeah. And what's your job there?
Well, I'm currently a capital project manager. So I'll scope and do estimates for capital projects, building things, a lot of usually processes, right? So industrial processes, dryers, dust collectors, pumping and piping systems, things of that sort for loading trucks or whatever we're doing. So I'll scope a project, get it approved, and execute the construction, the design side, all of that, commissioning, that type of thing.
Yeah. How long have you been there at Ingredion?
Well, I graduated from the University of Waterloo in 2004 as a mechanical engineer, and pretty much started working in Cardinal that fall, that same year. I started as a junior process engineer, then did a year of supervising the night shift, moved to a senior process engineer. I was divisional manager in the operations group for 4 years, and now I'm in capital project management. That's where you find me now. So it's been 15 years now of doing this stuff, and it's been quite a ride.
Yeah. How much is IT stuff part of your job at this point?
Well, almost none, really.
Oh, okay.
I mean, relatively speaking, yeah. It's my familiarity with IT really just comes from, every trained engineer has an introductory course into a sequential programming language, whether it's C++, JavaScript, or punch cards, right? Since the dawn of training engineers, there has been a component of hey, computers are pretty important, it looks like, and you need to know how they work.
Yeah, okay.
Right? So just a fundamental exposure to that type of thing is really all I've had. And then, a little bit of occasional interest as, growing up. I had to configure a 28.8 modem once, and that's about the extent of my powers.
Okay. Well, if you can do that, that's actually pretty impressive.
There you go, right? So,
so yeah, you make use of Mediawiki there. That's of course why you're on the podcast. How and when did that start?
Well, so I started in 2004, and as a young engineer, I'm just getting into the role. I'm using fundamental thermodynamics, industrial system design, looking at centrifuges, dryers, dust collectors, all that type of equipment. And which kept me pretty busy. And by 2006, I noticed anytime I wanted information, I'd be like calling vendors and really having to start from scratch. And I thought, man, this stands to be like improved like a lot. There is definitely room to do this a little bit easier because I'm kind of getting used to Google, right, and instant access to information at that point. You might even say getting like entitled to that, right? Where I kind of, I'm like, I don't want to do that. And so I thought, I remember one time looking up, I was trying to rename a bunch of files that were like some episodes of Friends or something like that for my wife, back in 2006. And I remember like, okay, so I Google it, give me a list of this. And what's the first thing that comes up, right? Is a Wikipedia article with exactly the information I'm looking for. And I remember stopping and thinking, like, how's this possible? How can a bunch of people that have nothing in common but an interest in the content itself create like this super usable repository, right? And I'm at work and I got a bunch of people, we're like all tasked to work together and we don't have anything that comes close. So that kind of started the wheels going of like, well, what is this, right? What is this thing? Oh, what is Mediawiki? Okay, what's Wikimedia Foundation? What is all this weird stuff? And so by 2008, I established the first installation kind of here, working on a little desktop under my desk, and that was kind of that's how it all started.
Yeah, and was it in the beginning? What kind of stuff did it hold?
At the beginning, a lot of like equipment information about our different departments. Like this manufacturing plant, we've got about 200 people that work here, and we're on like 60 acres. And there we have thousands of pieces of equipment. We've got like enough to fill our own Wikipedia full of information, right? Just on the nuances of how the processes work, the types of equipment we have, the types of jobs that happen, all that type of thing. It's vast. And so really I just started making stuff. And what really I think started to take the most traction there was we used it as a logbook. I had made a little extension to really just be like a 1996 style weblog. And that allowed us to track what was happening on the night shift by department and leaving instructions for people. And that was all, I kind of made it so it's as an extension, a very, very kind of plain Jane thing, but it's still used to this day, right? And it has tens of thousands of posts in it. And that's kind of how it started. But then it turned into leaving like activity management. Like for as much as you can record or make an article about something static, you can also talk about a project and lay out the whole, all the implications, all the components of a project. You can do that in an article pretty well. And then that stands for reference. The second someone asks me, hey, can you remember about that job with the widgets? Right? In 3 seconds, I have all the information, right? And I can send a link or just speak to it immediately, do it right from a control room, right, where someone has that question. It basically reduced the time to have information that I needed to like 3 seconds.
Yeah. Was it hard to get other people in the beginning to contribute to, or did people?
Oh, sure. Okay. I mean, for the longest time, it was just this weird thing that Lucas was doing, right? Okay. And like, oh, Lucas, please, would you stop it with this? Now, I mean, and it's had different reactions. Some folks, I had a manager once that looked at it and said, well, sure, we want to do this. This has everything I need, right? But I mean, we have turnover, right? That was like 4 managers ago. And that's just the reality, right? Especially of industry, right? We're in mature industry. This factory is 161 years old, right? So there's all kinds of culture that extends a long way back, right? So trying to like push change and like or improvement rather, it's not simple.
Yeah. Although ironically, the high turnover is a big argument for having a wiki, I would think. I mean,
it is a beautiful argument for having a wiki, right? So as we move forward, right, there's just this pillar of common documentation practice, right? That stands as a reference, really, for from now and until we ever decide to either put it on hold or scrap it, or I don't know how we do that, but I mean, or transition to something else. But whenever that happens, we at least have this.
Yeah. So is the wiki still your baby, I guess, or have other people?
Oh, it's become, Well, I mean, I consider myself the chief editor, right? So I'm typically, which I've had a couple of suitors for champion, over the years, and they've come and then they've left, right? And I've still been here, and but every year there's more and more interest. And every year there's more and more adoption for the different things we have. Every single year we'll introduce a new workflow that's helping us solve a problem that we always had, or introduce a new kind of flavor of content that helps us solve a problem we always had. But adoption has been slow, probably, I mean, since we're a manufacturing plant, like IT projects, right? That's not something we're encouraged to pursue. Like kind of, on the whole, it's not. We're an agricultural processing facility, right? So, and I'm a mechanical engineer, right? It's not historically speaking. It's a weird. It's kind of it's unusual, right? To have a project like this, which is understandable.
Historically speaking, you mean in the context of your company or your
sure,
branch?
Yeah, right. Like this, I might be jumping ahead, but this tool is it's totally backwards compared to your classical. Okay, we're going to build a system and it's going to do this, and then you guys are going to use it, right? Instead, it's okay. Here's a baseline like development platform. I mean, that's how we use it. It's a documentation engine. It's an accountability vehicle, right? That's all it is. It tracks some person did exactly this thing at exactly this time for this reason. That's it, right? And in manufacturing, we thrive on that, right? It's like the best network you can have about knowing what's happening and why, right? So in that kind of standpoint, it's a perfect fit, right? For everything we do. We're all about log sheets. We're all about reporting, and this just blows away any other kind of approach I think that you could even propose, let alone giving the keys to the people that are using it, right? So we short-circuited the development cycle instead of like the classical approach of scoping a project and seeing how much it's going to take to get it, and then kind of entering or doing a cost analysis and trying to figure out the execution and then scheduling all that stuff, and then ultimately coming back around. We just do it, right? So what might be an 18-month project can happen in 3 hours. That's a big deal, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That brings up a number of different things. What you just said. I guess we'll go through them. So first of all, you talked about the sort of the technical aspects. You put together a great presentation that's on your website, and I'll have a link to it from the podcast.
Sure.
It's basically just a slideshow presentation about all the different ways the Mediawiki is being used now. So you talked about how what it was like when it got started. At this point, it's a much bigger thing than just a knowledge repository. It seems.
Yes, certainly. And that would probably primarily come from since we're manufacturing, we have industrial computers, right, and big process control, distributed control systems, PLCs, right, all that stuff, and we live and die by those systems, and having ways to pull information from them and then massage it into knowledge. Right? Okay, this number's higher. Well, what does that mean? And how can someone have an impact on what that is? How can a system tell that person who's interested in that number or that condition, whatever it is, why it's important, what to do about it, right? And also being able to hold people to account for those values, if that makes any sense. So we have a whole bunch, hundreds of articles that are dedicated to exploring live information, right? Or aggregates of like monthly reports and that type of thing based on information coming from our DCS, like our industrial computers. So that's huge.
Yeah, okay. And that's done via Semantic Mediawiki or external data
okay.
or something?
There's we kind of half use external data, right? Because there's some
that's the name of an extension, by the way.
That's I mean the external data extension. Yeah. There's also a couple of like custom extensions that we've written to be able to take like SQL statements and pass them straight to these to our historians, which is just like a lot of like process historians they call it, which are basically huge amounts of time series data, right? Where you have some value for a tag, and over time it changes and it tracks those. And just about all of these historians have like a SQL interface where you can pass a query and say, here, I want to know the average for that point from this time to this time, but only when this other point was like less than 6, right? And it'll get that. It'll say, okay, yeah, no problem, and it'll spit that out, right? Or so SQL statements on very, very basic data, but like you can do a lot of neat weighted averages and timing and that type of thing. And so we're able to coax that data out of the process historians and then display it on a page load, right? So I've got a page, like an article that's all about one of the industrial dryers we have. So you load that up, and it shows you all the information about the project under which it was installed with a link to that, and then all the nameplate information, operating information, things you'd want to know that would typically be in a file. But then right in line with it, it'll tell you, and here's a graph of what the pressure's been over the last day, right? And here's how the valve's controlling, and here's how the temperature is, right? It's like an integrated documentation idea. Like it's like comprehensive plant intelligence.
Yeah,
I guess,
that's really
right?
Cool.
Yeah. It's I've never seen anything like it.
Oh, really? I mean, you're not aware of how aware are you of systems being used at other companies or?
Well, I mean, reasonably aware. Most companies, especially like mature companies like ours, we have the siloed compartments, right? And certainly through the mid 2000s up until now, all of those different silos have pursued software as a service models with all kinds of different vendors, right? And so if you're a reliability guy, you're using this package, right? And if you're a quality person, you're using this other one. If you're in accounting, you're over here, right? In finance, you're using this. If you're in engineering, you're going to use that. So there's very few holistic, like comprehensive, here's everything you want to know about this one thing. So that's I've never seen anything like it, really.
Wow. Okay. That's really good to know, actually. Yeah, I always wondered about that. Obviously, I try to sometimes market Mediawiki as I call it an enterprise integration hub.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is, like, or what it can be used for.
Yeah, but I never know whether what we're competing with. But maybe.
Right. Well, and I don't know what you are competing with. I mean, to an extent, right? There are available like SharePoint and Power BI type plugins to try to talk to that same data, right?
Yeah.
But show me one that lets the end user go in there and monkey with it.
Yeah.
Right? That's like this is uncharted territory, and it's quite exciting.
Yeah. So back to just the technical aspects of it. There's also in that case you're dealing with external data, small e, small d external data. But there's also quite a bit of structured data being stored within the wiki, no?
Oh, it's wild. So Mediawiki got going by 2009. It was running, and I think I read a list of like top 10 extensions for your Mediawiki back in like 2011, and Semantic Mediawiki was right at the top. And I'm looking at it, and I have to remember, right, and remind myself that I had no idea really what was going on, how to really use Mediawiki, what semantic data even meant. All I knew was like, it says you can do this, a bit of extra functionality. So on a whim, I installed it. That was back when I would like administer the the back end of the wiki myself. I've gotten totally out of that. Like we're in production now, and like it can't be down. If that thing goes down, I'll get a phone call within 3 minutes saying, "Hey, what's going on?" Right?
Oh, wow.
So, it's we need it. And so I read that. I was like, oh, okay, well, I don't know what that means, but let's get it in, and then muddled around with it for a bit. And once the light bulb went off, right, of, oh, I can create any property I want. It doesn't even have to make any sense. And the wiki doesn't have any feelings about how many I make or what I call them, but there's probably a better way, to do some of them. That began the transformation of like, we don't have to update lists anymore. We update the content of the articles, and the lists are automatic, right? So great. That's a huge administrative burden that we would previously have is, okay, can you update that spreadsheet and change that list, right? It's moving to a database model where you're having reports on things instead of like trying to update lists. So that alone was like, this is awesome. This is great. But then moving more into like, okay, let's use articles to manipulate workflows, right? So where we previously have like a sheet that would get passed around and different people sign it, we can make a little form and template combo that walks people through how to modify it, right? And with simple buttons, simple drop downs, checkboxes, all that great stuff, and that we can duplicate what used to be kind of tricky, right? And full of, had lots of opportunity to be leaned out. You'd have stacks of checklists sitting on someone's desk, and you didn't know where any of them were, and that was basically eliminated, right? With any time we'd implement a template form combination. So now we've got hundreds of different properties defined across our wiki, and I mean hundreds of thousands of property values. Some of them we use to cache the current state of something from our distributed control system, right? So that we can query that value in Wiki, right? And we can say, hey, show me all the things that are like out of code right now, right? And it'll say, oh, here they all are, right here, right? And with links to their trending information, links to like why they're important, little tool tips, right? That say, hey, this is important because such and such and such and such, right? And it just smacks you in the face with everything you could possibly want to know about that information you've got, like about the data. So it's the transition from data to knowledge.
Yeah. Wait. So what was that last part about transitioning from data to knowledge? Oh, you're saying once you query and present something in context, then it becomes true knowledge.
Exactly. Yeah. So we have we call them exception reports, right? So say there's, I don't know, we got 10,000 tags in our DCS, that is like our industrial computers, and to know, like, to articulate which ones are in an approved, like in a state that we are happy with, right, and which ones are not, which ones are important, like, and not just like their current value, but like, was their average over the last day something we want to see, or did it ever move so far that we should look into that. This gives us a platform that like anybody's able to go in and adjust, right? Because I mean, there's software packages for days, right, about all this type of stuff, and any of our vendors would be more than happy to supply us an entire solution to take care of everything we want to do. Well, right? I mean, you're in IT, right? You get it. You're selling stuff. And that gets back to like, if you talk about why Mediawiki and why semantic forms, why page forms.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah.
Why do any of this? The big piece is short-circuiting that development cycle. We're skipping over the user fees, like license fees, all that stuff, per user limits and all that type of thing, concurrent user stuff. We jettison the entire model that we've kind of traditionally understood.
Yeah.
And that's a big shakeup.
Yeah, well, I wanted to ask about the cost aspect of it, actually, because I would think at a major company like Ingredion, you can pretty much afford any software you wanted to use, no?
Sure, but that, like, those and there's a very lively digital transformation group that's underway and tackling a lot of that stuff, right? Of course, they're trying we're doing it for the whole company. And I think that's one of the primary opportunities, right? That at least that I'm seeing here with what we're doing. How you define the community is everything, right? Like Mediawiki is totally not suitable for a whole whack of corporate uses. Like there's all kinds of it where it's not. I'm speaking to the read and write kind of permissions that you're able to instill into a Mediawiki installation, right?
Yeah.
Like and that's usually as far as any discussion gets. It's like, oh, you can't control what people see.
Right.
Well, we're done talking, right? Before saying, okay, well, what if you defined a community as a bunch of people that could see the same thing, and then you stuck with using that package or that platform for only things that really anybody in that community is allowed to see, right? And I think what's really surprising or really remarkable is the size of, how you say, application, or like the depth, like for that is, I would guess it's bigger than 90%, right, of the overall utilization of all our software, right? Like there's that much room when you're down in the bottom, like way in the trenches of product realization, right? We're loading trucks, we're making product. Down in here, we don't have the secrets. I hate to, I don't want to say secrets, but sensitive information, right? Yeah. And there's, when you go up our corporate structure, right? People are working on pretty important stuff, and it can't just get out there willy-nilly, right? There's controls and security things that have to be that are different, right? Compared to when you're dumping bags and you're trying to record which products you've reprocessed. So it's and I think that, how do I say this? It's that isn't yet. That hasn't been discovered, like we have a certain mindset about how these types of systems, or what they are and what they can do and who can do them. And we're out somewhere totally different, right? So it's hard to describe.
Right. You mean from the standard from general management point of view, everything is secret or sensitive unless stated otherwise, and you're saying, well, right. I guess that's still true, but for the vast majority of the time, there really is no benefit to keeping it secret.
Right. Yeah. Now, I mean, but if you're in management and you're making those decisions, chances are the stuff you're working on is confidential, right? Like, or rather, it's not meant to be seen by a bunch of people because people get talking, right? And that's just all part of normal the common sense, really, right? That you have to implement at those levels. So, we're in a whole. It seems to me that we're in a very different kind of environment once you get down to the manufacturing level.
Right. So actually, that sort of gets into the question of scope. I mean, there's like 11,000 employees at Ingredion. How many people are using the wiki?
Okay, well, like I mentioned, there's 200 of us here at Cardinal.
Yeah.
There are 2 other active wikis that we've deployed in North Kansas City.
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
And in Indianapolis.
Oh.
And so they're slowly growing, right? Each one needs its own kind of champion. But again, big company. I've trained people, right? I've poured myself into some folks, right, to show them, and which is exciting because you can take a non-technical user and show them how to do this stuff, and they look and they say, okay, I recognize these patterns. I understand what a pipe is now, right? And you can get them to build these systems. Pardon me, and really unlock all kinds of neat potential in people that would otherwise be like, oh, I'm just a chemist, right? Oh, I'm in administration, or I'm an engineer, right? Or I'm a lab tech. I'm an operator, right? All these people stand to be unlocked, or can be, right?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you as you said, you're not an IT person either.
No,
but you've been able to create a massive amount of stuff. So yeah, I mean, if the idea is each is it factory, or what's the term for one branch or something? One location.
Plant. We'd say
one
a
plant.
plant.
Okay.
One plant.
Yeah. So if the system you set up is suited for one plant, could it be? I guess maybe the word is productized. Could it be? Where you just copy
certainly.
over everything and for use.
Yeah, and we've. Especially now with all the kind of the cloud tools available, I've got a plan that I'd love to execute, any second, really, is to containerize a lot of the services, right? And then just be able to use Docker or something and just shoot them out wherever they're going to be, right? And be able to maintain the code base really easily. More specifically, be able to ensure a reliability aspect. We're in continuous operations, right? We don't shut down. Christmas, we're running, right? New Year's, we're running. It doesn't matter what day of the year it is. This place has got to run. And so we have a high interest in reliability. So something that's robust and gets us away from, which I know are those are the big problems of, okay, I'm running N wikis. How do I control them all and make sure that they're doing the right thing with the least amount of effort, right? And nobody wants to configure individual servers. That's nuts, right? So
and you don't want to be responsible for any number of wikis going down or having problems at any point in time.
Exactly, that's unacceptable. Yeah. So, and that's I'm a firm believer in microeconomics, right? And I believe and trust that as time unfolds, we will gradually get to the optimal solution. Right now, that amount of time might be, longer than I'm employed, or that type of thing. But ultimately, we will get there, and that's a real curious kind of analysis for this type of platform where you've got ultra low inputs for the highest possible outputs. I guess is the way to say it, right? We create tremendous value in connecting people with what they're doing here and eliminating needless administrative burden, right? Where reports just magically fall out of the sky now. We just click the link and you've got everything you want to know.
Yeah. I guess just to establish, you sort of, I guess you've said it before, but how mission critical is the wiki at this point from an official point of view?
Well, it depends on what time frame you're looking at, right? So, the wiki, like any other system, we could replace it with something else, right? It's a question of, okay, what would we use, and how well will that work, and will it do everything we want? Over time, we've adopted a few things, even in just the last couple of years, that are pretty high profile. Right? Because of there's a stigma, right, in industry against wikis. There just is. How could something that anybody can kind of mess around with be useful, right? We need control, which is that comes from I call it paper syndrome, right? For how many thousands of years we've used paper, and I put a piece of paper in front of you, and that implies that you can see it, right? 2, you could modify it permanently. 3, you could destroy it, right? So I think there's still principles in our very nature that haven't let go of that, right? And we say, I'd let you look at this, but I just don't think I want you to do that, right? But you introduce something like a wiki, where all of a sudden that piece of paper isn't just what's on it, right? It's a compendium. It's a collection of contributions, right? And it's all about how its life cycle kind of evolved and who's touched it. What did they do? When did they do it?
Oh, I see. Okay.
You know what I mean? So compared to a piece of paper. So if you adopt, I think this is why Wikipedia works, right? It's here, I trust you with this. And even if you mishandle it, that's fine, right? Because I can tell.
Right.
There's a full account. So we're still getting our heads around that. That's a game changer as far as a concept in how to transmit information or let people or see the information evolve. And that's I'm sorry, I get all philosophical when I talk about this stuff, but I really think that's what we're up against, right? It's a monumental change, right? So
yeah,
you look at it that way. You throw in that idea that it's totally different than anything you've been familiar with, and we don't yet know the implications. And then throw in the by the way, it's it's a community-driven effort, and it was in fact invented by an open source community, right? That's okay, and so there's nobody in charge. These are all things that we're not used to.
Sure. Well, yeah. I don't know if that's much of a sales pitch, but
we don't even know what it is, and that's been okay. I always reflect and how do I define what the value is here, right? And then there's a few things where you can say, well, we don't have a bunch of license fees. Okay, that's something, right? But if you're a great, if you're a large company, you're less under the gun for that type of thing. The development cycle, right? Okay, well we can for a fraction of the percent of a normal development cycle, we can get the same type of work done.
Yeah.
That is interesting, right? And then further, because of the self-governance kind of idea, you further reduce the amount of inputs necessary to maintain what you're working on, on a huge scale. So, and how do you put dollars to that? Because at the end of the day, that's kind of we're a publicly traded company. We're responsible to the shareholders. We need to speak to that, and we can't be doing things willy-nilly.
Yeah. Well, that gets into something that's come up before on this podcast, at least once, maybe a few times, which is the negative view of Mediawiki and wikis in general has definitely come up a bunch of times. But just the idea that even among managers at companies where it is in use and is used heavily, there's still the perception that it's just a placeholder technology until some real software comes along, which is sold by guys in suits and costs $1 million or something, and it doesn't matter how widely it's used or how easy, as you've noted, it is to get it set up and make changes and all of that. It still doesn't quite seem. There's a problem, I think, of people in management not quite getting that this is in fact the best tool, or not believing that it's the best tool for the job.
There's a tone of that, right? I mean, there's no one out there selling it, right? Not to the extent that someone's pouring real dollars into marketing and all that type of stuff, and yet Mediawiki kind of hums along and it's its own thing, and it's right. That's not in the interest of Mediawiki, right? It's not. It doesn't have a dog in the race when it comes to how widely it's utilized. At least you know what I mean, right? From that point of view.
It's not in the interest of the core Mediawiki developers, definitely.
Right.
It just doesn't matter to them one way or the other. Yeah.
Right, but to the people that go to the Enterprise Mediawiki conference, right? It's a big deal.
Right.
Right. It's doing everything. It's a big deal to me, right? I mean, I didn't anticipate this, right? So 11 years of this wiki here in Cardinal, and how there's those things you do in your life, and there's things people get good at, right? They say, okay, you put 10,000 hours into this, and you're good at it.
Right.
I never ever anticipated. If somebody had asked me 15 years ago, hey, you know what's your thing going to be? What are you going to be amazing at, right? That no one can even touch you. I would not have said, "Oh, I'm going to be a good Mediawiki editor."
Right,
I'll do magical things with templates and do all kinds of data integration stuff. All on the side, right? This isn't my job. I only do it in as much as it helps me do my job better. It helps me and my colleagues. It helps my colleagues do their jobs better, right? It complements every other system we have, and that's a major feature, right? And it's part of kind of the if you don't regiment what you're going to use it for, and instead say, well, use it to fill in the cracks, right? The the cracks actually end up constituting like the vast majority of of your whole kind of world. I don't know if I'm saying that right. That's back to the tone of like there's a lot of room for systems like this, right? That we don't typically talk about because it hasn't come up yet.
Yeah. So speaking of marketing, I guess you sorry. I guess you talked about this a little before, but are you actively trying to convince other plants of the what was it 40 you said to make use of this?
I am doing better. Part of it is like we have numerous groups, right? And they're all clamoring to kind of, and this comes back to like the siloed mature organization issue, right? Where there's a lot of co-current efforts, all kinds of initiatives that all have a very similar end, right? We're all trying to push for improvement, all trying to push for development. Right. So, and with like this isn't, there's no corporate like initiative to like, hey, say do a wiki. Where that comes from typically is someone will say, hey, I saw you. Someone sent me a link to this thing you're doing in Cardinal. Can you do that for a new plant that we're spinning up? Right? I'll say, yeah, of course, like no problem. Right? That we'll do that. So it's not. It's definitely been it's all bottom up. Yeah. Right? Okay. There's not a corporate directive. And I mean, while that it would really help, right? Because particularly like, I mean, Mediawiki is localized in like better than 350 languages. Like English is the minority, I think, in most of our plants, right? We're all over the world. Oh, really?
Okay. Oh,
yeah,
It's
yeah, right.
Sure.
I mean, it's there'd be. I always pictured like, okay, the day I do like get a non-English wiki set up, that'll be like, okay, it's official, right? Right next to like the first day that we have some vandalism, I consider that like the day it's official, we've made it, right? I
see.
Where.
Yeah. Right, I can sort of see that. Well, if anyone from Ingredion is listening, you can help Lucas out.
I'd love that. I've never been a good salesperson, right? I'm a technical guy. And this whole project, right, has been not just a development project for like the platform itself, for me, but it helps me be a better manager, right? About being clear with people, about getting about being a leader, right? And getting people on board, finding out what that means, learning like what other people, like what drives other people, how do you get them to come along? And so this has been a fantastic journey in that, right? To entice people, and now to see other people saying, hey, I'm gonna make a template to do this thing. Do you think that would that work? And I say like, yeah, it'll work. Go for it, right? Let me know the second you have trouble, just because I remember not having a lot of help, when you're banging away at night trying to figure out how what you're missing a bracket or something, sure. Right? And you can't figure it out. But so that's happening now, and it I derive a lot of pride of workmanship, right? A lot of satisfaction in meeting out of the project, and I'm so grateful to you, to everyone, that like the whole developer community, the bug chasers, maintainers. This is like, it's a whole world for me, and is becoming more for all kinds of operators and contributors at Cardinal. So that's like, I did want to say that before I forgot, but to like just say thank you for this. It made so many things possible. It's like making things happen. Like we're like magicians, basically, the type of things that we're able to do.
Yeah, that's really cool. Well, thank you, and I think there are a lot of people listening to this podcast who are in one way or another involved with putting together everything. So that they can hear you. Also, yeah, that's really cool. I think a lot of people are gonna like hearing. Everything you're talking about. You said that there are people adding more templates. Is the scope of the whole thing still growing at this point in terms of the types of data going into the wiki?
Oh yeah, all the time. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a new like kind of form template. I'd say maybe, I don't know, between 4 and 6 every year. And that's changing, and it stands to be changed rapidly as we kind of undergo like a more digital transformation, and the idea that like, okay, like we have hundreds, I would say in a given day, say maybe there's 50 log sheets, right, that are filled out by operators. We're talking pen to paper, right? We're an ISO certified outfit, right? So you need to have very good record keeping. And exchanging a paper log sheet system for like a digital one, which is totally allowed, right, under like the different ISO certifications and standards. You just need to document it properly. This thing, like you can't even touch it. It's like having, it's like you're auditing your whole system all the time. Like there's always two-step, what would you call it, like verification. Like an operator will fill out some documentation or like a record, right, a form that stands to be a record, and that needs to get verified by someone, right? So now we can do that and have started to do that digitally, right? And it's all in the history of the article. So, and that's one of the things we stand to do quite a bit more of, is to have, call it a smart log sheet or electronic checklists, that type of thing. We already do all kinds of auditing with it, where I click a button and it fires up here's 20 questions that you gotta say yes, no, or not applicable, and if you say no, you better explain why, and then you got to assign like a kind of an action item associated with that, like to get it resolved. And we use Category Watch extensively, so everybody who's involved, they get an email. Like if I was to describe to you, even in summary, the things we're doing with it, like specifically, I'd probably take 2 hours, maybe 3. And if we wanted to get into any kind of detail, we're talking 4 days, right? Like I could go on forever about the stuff we're doing and how it works and all that type of thing. So as you can tell, I'm addicted to it. I get little dopamine hits every time I like fix a little thing for somebody. Someone says, "Hey, can you make this do that?" I'm like, "Yeah, we can do that." And all of a sudden it does it, right? And I'm addicted to it. No joke, right? Like, right, or whatever you want to call it. That I derive a lot of satisfaction out of it.
That's great, fantastic. Yeah, I think you could have been a programmer in another life.
I got into once it came to objects and stuff, I didn't know what I was talking about. Even trying to work with the core and stuff, I'm like, I don't get this.
All right. Yeah. No. All right. I bet you could. Yeah. But what you're describing is a very similar kind of
mindset. Sure.
Mindset, and with the occasional thrill of success justifying lots of time.
You're touching on something. Yeah. I don't know if I would want to do this all the time.
Oh, okay.
You get it, right? Like there's back to that set of people that are your target. I would say your target audience, your target users. I would say a lot of them aren't really interested in doing this all the time, but maybe 5% of the time, 10% of the time, like, oh yeah, this is perfect. And I mean the development side. I don't mean like the utilization side.
Yeah, well, when you talk about development, it's sort of you're talking about creating data structures and
yes, I don't mean the background. Yeah, I'm just talking basically templates and forms. Like that's it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I can see that. You like going in and maintaining and occasionally adding new features and stuff, but it's not it's not the.
It's not my job.
Right. Sure.
Right. It's like icing. It is icing on the. It's icing on the
that's
cake.
Very nice.
Right?
Okay.
Oh
yeah. Yeah. So again, I mentioned before, but you have that slideshow. I don't even know how up to date it is, and maybe
it's wildly out of date.
Oh,
I should
really?
do
Okay.
another one.
Yeah. Okay. Because it does list a whole bunch of data. I don't even know what the word is. Data types. Kinds of information.
Structures, different things, right? From little workflow ticket systems to specific like localized procedures, right? We have a lot of you can sell a big software package and say, yep, this does regulatory stuff, right? But okay, we're in Eastern Ontario, and we've got the Ministry of Labor, right? For Ontario, there's some specific requirements there. So all of a sudden, your packaged, your canned software packages are limited, right, to people that are selling to people in Ontario, right? Unless you can just build it yourself and satisfy all those requirements, right? So that's kind of same with like regulatory reporting, right? There's some specific things that we need to be able to do, and it's difficult to just buy a monolithic system that'll just do that for you. There has to be some customization, or has to be some input from the people that use it to make it work, and this facilitates that.
Yeah. And there might not be any software application that's specific to the exact regulatory.
Exactly.
Right,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It might not exist at all.
Right. Are there any features you'd like to see added to Mediawiki? I mean, obviously you talked about the lack of read access. Read access.
Well,
but that's not even necessarily.
It's not. Yeah, I guess I've come to a place where I'm like, sure, that would be neat, but in same as I think I read on your WikiWorks page once that, like, if you look at it and if you're defining it by your community, you're going to find that you can create a handful, a very low number of wikis that'll satisfy this the criteria that you're looking for, right, for keeping things kind of locked down.
That does sound like something I wrote once.
It was years ago. I think I saw that. I thought, maybe I should focus on that instead of. I've played around with like the lockdown extension and stuff like that.
Okay.
And to an extent, right, you can plug the holes. It's just at what seems to be the expense of the whole experience, right, and the whole point of or the whole tone of the Mediawiki installation itself, right? So that's not to say that it wouldn't be awesome to be able to say, I can do that, at least to check the box.
Okay.
Right. Of making people feel better. So I guess I've come around to you know what? It doesn't do that, but look what it does do. Right? What it does do is just it's wild, right? I feel like I get talking about this type of thing to my colleagues, right? And I'm not so much describing some kind of knowledge management platform. I'm telling them there's land on the other side of this ocean, right? Like, that's how I feel. Like it's that wild.
Yeah, I think I understand.
You know what I mean?
Like you feel like, I guess, Christopher Columbus trying to
I'm a crazy
people.
Person.
I see what you're
really. I'm a bit of a crazy person, right? So, and I have to keep that in check, right? That's I'm always second guessing all the time, and saying, okay, are people coming with me on this?
Right.
Maybe I'm crazy, but I seem to see something. But who, if you're seeing something and nobody else is seeing something, right? You're either onto something spectacular,
right,
or you're crazy,
just a nut.
Right? So I can't be jumping all over the place and saying, oh, look here, look there. It's there's got to be a tempered approach.
That's a known thing. There's a book I that's been very, very influential to me called Crossing the Chasm, about marketing of software. And one of the points that the author makes is that you really have to be careful not to oversell the software, even if it can do A, B, C, D, E. You shouldn't say that when trying to sell it. You should
sure. Someone might hold you to it.
Well, yeah, it's not even so much that the expectations are too high. It's just people just have a tendency to sort of shut off if you start talking in that kind of way. And then it's much easier to say it's just like what you're using now, except it does this one thing better. Even if you're wildly underselling the software, it's just easier for people to grasp and to believe. Right. But yeah, no, I'm with you definitely on all the strengths of Mediawiki, and it's good to hear from someone who actually is more aware of the current state of the software world than I am in the area of I don't know what you would call it, industrial. I don't know.
Yeah, call it like I've heard the idea of plant intelligence kind of thrown
plant
around.
Intelligence. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's big packages about that kind of thing that are or are not the same, right? And well, currently, right? If you're going to talk about data, and you're going to talk about integration, there's a marketplace for that, right? And it's huge, because by and large, the individual contributor isn't able to accomplish those types of things, right? So that's kind of our reality, right? So there's massive economies swirling around. I mean, you're participating in it, right? People need computers to do stuff, and
right.
How can people get them to do that? And at the end of the day, like since there's so much involved, right? I mean, there's commerce involved with like, oh, I want this data to talk to that data. Okay, there's a classical system and lots of vendors and all kinds of things that you can get any great PowerPoint show on like why this is the better one, and all kinds of meetings, right? It's big, right? It's a huge industry.
Yeah.
And we're sitting here saying, oh well, let's just put those together.
Right.
Oh, okay, worked, great, right? So it doesn't make any sense, right? It doesn't. It's a freak.
Yeah.
A good one.
Right. No. Yeah. No. It's a freak in that it wasn't intended for this purpose at all. And
right.
And out of the box, it doesn't support it.
Well,
I mean,
curiously,
quote, unquote,
right? What's Mediawiki set up to do? Right. Documentation.
Right.
Really. Right. You got a topic and you talk about some stuff.
Right.
By and large, I would say like that is the one thing that we do not use it for.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Right. Because we have, as part of like we have a training group, right, and we have a software as a service that is meant to hold Microsoft Word, word processor documents or files, right, that are to constitute training materials and all that type of thing, right? Standard operating procedures. So an operator is expected to, if they want to access that, they need to find it, right, and they can kind of open it up on a computer, which is a multi-step process. Which, I mean, that stands to be leaned out, but that's, this is a natural outcome from just how computers and information kind of evolved through the 90s and early 2000s, right? Is you got spreadsheets, you got Word documents, right? You got PowerPoint shows, and you got emails. You got tons of email. Occasionally, you have a Microsoft Access database, right? And now we're moving through a transition where all that's kind of like it's moving to something else, right? I don't really make Word documents anymore, right? On occasion, I'll have to like do like a job scope or something like that, and it will get printed out on a piece of paper and shared, outside of the company. So I'll fire it up and be like, oh wow, I haven't done one of these in a while, but right, because it's still part of the overall economy. It's part of what we do is use all those little things, and we're in the midst of huge changes, and we don't know where it's going to go. But I do know it's going to look something like what I saw back in 2005, right? Where I'm reading an article and saying, wow, this is pretty simple. It'll look like this. Whatever it is, wherever we get to, in 20 years, it's going to be something that comes across a standard interface like a web browser or whatever we're using then. Right? I'm going to be able to do something with it. I'll be able to manipulate it, right? Because that'll be important. That's part of our owner's mindset, right? One of our company core values is that I can contribute to it. I can own it. I can have a stake in it.
Oh, okay.
It'll be something like that. I don't know maybe it'll be Mediawiki. I don't know. This could just be a step on the way there.
Right. But it won't. You're saying it'll look like.
It'll be something like it.
It'll look like documents, but there's actually quite a bit more going on behind the scenes.
Yeah. It'll be knowledge.
Right. Okay. Yeah. There's something specific. Might only be interesting to me. It's probably more interesting to more people than just me. But I've actually been looking recently very specifically into project management, using Mediawiki to help support project management.
Sure, I was reading a bit about that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, in your slideshow thing, you meant one of the many visualizations and features you mentioned was something called Gantt charts, which are used for project management visualization. Yeah, what have you done as far as project management stuff, and is there anything that you would like to see added to the overall system?
Gosh. Yeah, I'm of two minds there, right? Because partially I'm like, well, with properties, templates, and forms, you can do just about anything you want, right? I can make an article, and then I can identify like sub-articles, not I don't want to say sub-pages, but like another article that is task-oriented that contributes to the completion of the parent, right? So we can have parent-child relationships between our articles, and they can fork too. Like they can be one effort can have like more than one parent, right? It can be related to the completion of more than one overarching effort,
right?
And each of those articles really are basic descriptions of what's going on, who's involved, what are the time frames, and then to an extent, like we have a task template, we call it, which is really a small blurb about something that someone can do within a certain period of time, right? It has a duration, it has a target date, it has people, one or more people associated with it, and then a status field. And once you have a collection of that information, you can output a Gantt chart, right? Because you know when the task starts and stops. You know what it is. You know how it relates to other tasks.
Right.
So we've got like a pretty. It's simple, but it's a very it's a powerful way to at least get visualizations on what activities you have going, right? So I can print a report that basically spits out a Gantt chart of here's all open projects at Cardinal, right? Like start and finish times of a dozen or so open capital projects, based on the information that's stored in the project articles. So,
right.
Gosh, if I was to think about like ways to make that better, a way.
Well,
no, the interdependence of tasks, right? Like if you're using MS Project, right? You can say, okay, this task can't start any earlier than this other task finishes.
Right.
Right. That'd be a handy interface to be able to set up relationships between individual tasks, and we haven't done that, right? I'll go in and manually manipulate dates or something, which is pretty easy given the forms extension, right? I click around this, do that, and it's good for me to leave an update, right? I change my dates, and then in the summary field, I say what's going on, right? There's been a delay on this. This thing didn't get shipped. Such and such has happened. We had to change the design on that. Right, so we're leaving the account, we're creating the story, and that's a way that we can do that. But I'll have to think about that, like for a cool project management like tweaks, because from where I sit, I've got like 90% of
really?
what I
Okay.
would need.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I mean,
well,
remember the logbooks I was talking about? Like each of our departments, the operators read their logbook, and at the top of the logbook has kind of like a little activity feed. And if I make an update to a project-related article that impacts their department, right? We have a property called department. They see that at the top of their kind of world. They say, "Oh, Lucas has been working on this project here. I wonder what he did." Right? So in one click, they can go and see it.
Right.
I've been stopped right on the process floor before to discuss projects that I'm working on. Right? Like there's an audience and they see it. And that's a way for them to be like aware, like it's like a channel, like a news feed almost.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. And we're just scratching the surface with that type of thing.
Yeah, of knowing. Yeah, you can right, being able to see, for any person, what are they working on right now, and what have they been working on before.
And what's more specifically, what's important to me in my department? Because maybe I don't have as vested an interest as in something that's happening across the site that doesn't impact me. So I really want to know just what, I want stuff that I care about, and we can flavor it like that.
Yeah. Yeah, but as far as project management stuff and for for people not that interested, please forgive my self-indulgence here. But there's things I've just been looking into it recently. There's things like BPMN and Kanban charts or whatever, Kanban something, and Mermaid and all these things. I don't know if any of those.
I'm particularly interested in Mermaid.
You're not, or you are?
I am particularly
really?
interested
Okay.
in that.
Okay.
Oh yes. Oh man, I want that so bad. We're stuck on like Mediawiki 123.2.
Okay.
So I mean, I need an update real bad. But we got like, I don't know, 30 some extensions that I got to get tweaked.
Yeah.
Really for the next piece. So I
Right,
need a little bit of help.
Yeah. Okay.
With that. But like, yeah, you're touching on something wild, right? Which is like, I want to describe relationships and then visualize them.
Right.
Right. So we have endless flow diagrams that are critical to our organization, right? Where we've got miles and miles of piping, all kinds of different processes, and currently, right, we'll draw them, which is fine. But what if you didn't have to? Right? What if I could describe
Right.
what a process does, and the computer just takes care of the visualization end? Like that's uncharted territory for us, big time. For anyone, I would think, at least in the industrial environment sense.
Yeah. Huh. And you think Mermaid is the best tool for that? I mean, maybe it is, I don't know.
We hacked together a cytoscape style one, but like from what I saw, Mermaid had like a more elegant markup, right?
Yeah.
It was a bit less, a little less complicated, I think, right? A different style. But again, that's kind of outside my realm of expertise, like by a margin. When I see something and I get to play with it, I think, oh man, we could do amazing stuff with this tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right? Diagrams of utilities across the site, how things interact, right? They're all in drawings, which, I mean, Mediawiki made a huge dent in that for us. Like, we had more than 5,000 technical drawings uploaded to like a standalone Mediawiki installation that serve as our repository for technical drawings. It manages all the changes,
Okay.
all the revisions of the CAD or the PDF versions that we have.
Oh man.
Right.
Right.
Oh, it's awesome. Oh, it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Mediawiki was never really meant to do that,
Right.
but it does it very, very well.
Yeah. Okay. Gosh. Wow. 5,000 drawings of processes, I guess, or relationships.
Yeah,
and stuff.
structural drawings, electrical drawings,
Oh, okay,
piping
okay.
diagrams,
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah.
anything. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I guess you could use a few more drawings.
We're good.
Well, oh, okay. No, I'm saying, well, you're talking now about adding more visualization stuff, but these wouldn't be drawings; they would be automatically generated.
It would be like let's transition from this idea that somebody has to drag a box around a screen and connect it with lines, right? And say, let's focus instead on like describing what this process is and let the computer do the rest, right? And that's happening now. We can do that. But there's, I sound like I have 10 heads when I talk to my colleagues about stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, I totally understand. Yeah, I think that's all my questions. We obviously covered a lot of stuff. Is there anything else you want to talk about? Anything we missed?
Oh gosh.
Well, we never really. I was in the middle of asking what weaknesses you saw or what missing features there were. I mean, you mentioned Mermaid. Is there anything else that you that strikes you that jumps out at you?
It's not what's missing. I find isn't technical, right? It is the it's a value case that's well described for the whole concept. Right? I mean, we'll talk all day about what Mediawiki is, right, and how to do stuff with it. But like trying to describe to people why, right? Why is Lucas doing this, right? What is his motivation, right? And tapping into like I call it. I mean, it would be the microeconomics piece, right? Are you familiar with William Edwards Deming? Like the father of statistical process control.
I saw him give a talk once, a
Really?
long time ago. Yeah, he was near the end of his life. and I was, I don't know, 13 or something. Yeah. Anyway, yeah,
That's
I
awesome.
remember. Yeah, it was. He had. He was. I think he was. It was like. Well, it was near the end of his life, but he was starting to get recognition again, from what I remember.
Sure. Well,
Yeah.
and it's and Adam Smith, right? The founder, right, of basically the grandfather of economics, right? And
I never saw him, but yeah.
But
Sure.
where I'm going with, like, in his book, I think it's on moral sentiment. He leads in with this idea that it's how's it go? Howsoever selfish man may be supposed, evidently there are principles in his nature that interest him in the fortune of others and renders their happiness necessary to him, though he derive nothing from it but the pleasure of seeing it. And then goes on, right, into to try to describe, like, and this is all like the fundamentals of microeconomics. Why do people do things? Why do we do things for each other?
Right.
Right? Why do we build teams? Right? And that resonates with me because I love helping people. I just love helping. I can't stop. And this is an avenue that allows me to do it. So how does that resonate with other people? How do you build a business case that says, yeah, this meets a need that we all have, right? And allows us to do more than we ever could, right? With less than we ever had. And speaks to the innumerable applications for it, right? I guess, you know what, the thing that kills Mediawiki often, right, is the deployment, right? Someone's got to figure out like a web server and like a database server and then like some kind of OS to run it on, right? Those are, at least they were for me, obstacles, right? I'm like, I don't know what PHP is. I got to figure out what this is.
Okay,
right? Right. There's, and that to put people to do that, I don't know what the alternative is, right? Like, what do you do? And maybe I haven't looked into it for a long time. I'll bet you can download a zip file that's got everything you need to run in a Windows environment or something. But that
I don't know.
that's an obstacle, right? The accessibility.
Right, sure. Yeah,
unless, of course, you're doing something like externally hosted, right? Like Referata or something, right? Where you can say, hey, what's up? I want one more wiki, please. Right? But to get to the benefit of having one on your internal organization piece, that's an obstacle, right? Because it's not like a package.
I don't know how it compares against other software. I mean, with proprietary software, obviously you have to pay someone to install it, so it's
right. Yeah, I guess it just gets taken care of.
Proprietary enterprise software and stuff. Yeah. That's interesting. But by the way, did you have that Adam Smith quote memorized, or were you reading it from someone?
No, yeah, I know that one.
Oh, wow, fantastic.
It's a favorite of mine.
Yeah, that it's very inspiring, and obviously he didn't know about open source software, but that definitely
it speaks to that thing. Yeah, it's
Right.
like, well, what is it? Like, why? We want people's lives to be better, right? It's part of what's the success of the Wikipedia project, right? It's inside of us. We want that, and this unlocks, or rather provides an avenue to get there. But that's a more abstract why case, right? Like, why do you do it? Although it is, I don't know how else to describe it.
Yeah, altruism. That's a great benefit of it's a great driver of all of this. Well, great. I think that's an inspiring way to end this episode. I guess that's it.
Thanks for having me on. That's it was really exciting for me to get to when I saw your email. I was like, woo! I mean, it was well, I mean, for
Fantastic.
me, I'm doing a lot of this stuff all the time, right? And to get to, I don't know if this gives back to the community in any kind of way, but I feel like an explorer, right? And it's been fun to describe, because most folks are, by and large, not interested, right? Ask my wife; she'll put up with it a little bit, right? But can you please shut that laptop down, right, and come to bed, right? So that's right. It's
sure.
I enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. No, I think a lot of people are going to enjoy hearing about what you've done in your setup, especially considering how massive and how important it is within your company, or within your plant, and hopefully one day within your overall company as well.
I like to think so, but
yeah.
that's going to work itself out, right?
Yeah.
It'll either be or it won't, and that's fine.
Yeah, yeah. Great. Yeah, I mean that's what this podcast is all about, is hearing individual the risk of getting too sentimental, hearing individual voices and stories, I guess.
There are lots.
Yeah, but yeah, this was great. Yeah, so that's it. Thank you very much, Lucas.
Anytime.
And this has been another episode of Between the Brackets. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks again to my guest, Lucas Billett of Ingredion. I'll see you next time.